Kim's dealing with iron overload as part of her puzzle. And you're probably familiar with iron because most people are more familiar with iron. And iron on the periodic table of elements is called Fe. It's just faster to write than iron. So Fe equals iron, just so you know. All right. Most people are used to iron in the role or form of iron deficiency because that's more common. And the most common symptom of iron deficiency is fatigue. So, obviously we don't want to be iron deficient because all of our cells and tissues need oxygen, which is what iron carries for us. But we also don't want to have iron overload because too much iron promotes what's called oxidative stress. Okay, and oxidative stress, my metaphor for that is rust. Okay, so just like you don't want to have inflammation, which metaphorically is fire, you also don't want to have oxidative stress, which metaphorically is rust, because rust will damage tissue just like fire will. And so people with iron levels that are too high have too much rust, and depending on where in the body that rust is building up, it might manifest itself as joint pains, as Hashimoto's disease, as hypogonadism, as anxiety, as restless leg syndrome, as Parkinson's, as all kinds of stuff. So
Cirrhosis.
yep, cirrhosis of the liver. Yeah, because when it's stored in the liver. So yes. So we don't want too much iron, and we don't want too much rust, because essentially rust is aging. So you age too fast. And the extreme end of iron overload is called hereditary
On the
hemo,
call.
hemochromatosis.
Yeah.
Mitosis. And these people, if it's not found, they die by age 65 because they essentially rust out or they age too fast. And so conventional medicine's gold standard treatment for those people is therapeutic phlebotomy, or basically you go donate blood every so often to pull the iron off. Okay. So if we look at an iron panel, which unfortunately conventional medicine doesn't run standard, all conventional medicine does standard is they look at your hemoglobin, and they say, if it's low, they say you need iron. If it's high, they say you're probably dehydrated. Unless they know you have high iron, then they'll say maybe it's high iron. But if they know you have high iron, they're probably testing your iron. All this to say, I've had many patients with normal hemoglobin and lab high iron or lab low iron. So your hemoglobin being normal doesn't mean your iron. It doesn't necessarily mean your iron is good. The best way to know is to run an iron panel and look at ferritin, which is the best marker of stored iron. So iron
Stored
storage.
iron.
Yep, and that's in the liver. Okay. You have your,
Okay.
hold on for me. You have your serum iron, which is what's in your blood to be used in real time. Okay, that's your iron cash flow. Ferritin is your iron savings account. Serum iron is your iron cash flow. That's what's in your wallet, say. And then we have what's called iron saturation percentage, or transferrin saturation percentage. And that's, how saturated is your blood with iron to carry oxygen. So these are the three main markers, and there's a couple others that you can look at, but these are the three main ones. And this is a very inexpensive panel to run. And because it's so inexpensive, but so key to physiology, I think it should be standard in healthcare, but I don't get to make the rules. So we run it, they don't. We can help you, they can't. So anyway,
Right.
ferritin. So Kim said earlier, if you go look up on LabCorp, they'll say the normal range is about 15 to 150. Different labs have a little bit different there. The low end might be a little lower or a little bit higher, but that's in general what they'll put. Serum iron could be, say, 35 to 180 depending on the lab, and iron saturation is going to be from about 13% to 55% usually is what they put. Okay, so these are huge ranges. Well,
Yeah.
if Kim was asking, well, what do we want to be, optimally? So if we want to be optimal, optimal range, what I like to see for the ferritin is between 30 and 70. Okay, and 50 would be bullseye in that. The serum iron, I like to see 85 to 115. And then the iron saturation between 30 to 40%. Okay, and if we talk about, if we go back up here to hereditary hemochromatosis, hereditary hemochromatosis diagnosis, we'll call it HH. Okay, they diagnose that when if your ferritin is lab high, that's a concern, and or if your iron saturation is lab high, that's a concern, and even if your iron is too, but more commonly they're looking at the ferritin and or the saturation. So if those are high, those can be a trigger to clinically get the doctor to say, look at the clinical picture, look at the symptoms, and are there symptoms that don't add up to anything else? They've been tested and nothing's showing up, and look at this high iron showing up, and then ask the question, hey, does hereditary hemochromatosis mean anything to you? And if they say, oh yeah, my uncle has it or my dad has it, well then you see the hereditary part, that's a genetic piece. So then we want to test that person for there's 3 genes that control iron storage. So we'd want to run that genetic test to see, which, if any of those genes, do they have a variant in? And the variants can promote anything on a spectrum from overload all the way up to hereditary hemochromatosis. So that's kind of the flow in terms of how you approach a case. I personally, if I see someone with the high ferritin and or iron saturation, if they have iron overload but no family history of the hereditary hemochromatosis, then I clinically usually seek to implement natural strategies to see, can we lower the iron naturally first? And if we can, well, cool, then we don't have to necessarily go down that rabbit hole yet. If we do everything that should work and it doesn't, then that suggests, okay, let's go with the genetic testing and pursue this a little bit further along those lines.